Obviously, you need to take it seriously, but this is not a major threat for the people of the United States, and this is not something that the citizens of the United States right now should be worried about.
往下走，没有电脑。放下来。那边不动，没有电脑。放下。放起来别。放那边。放这边。放好。放好。放好。放好东西。
我不想回家过年啊！你们做了什么？你们做了什么？你们5个只是看了800个病，还他妈1天4个班，还把我们抽了8个门诊去上班，我们不想活。你自己看，你们到底想干什么？你们啊！我不要人，你把那些病人都搞走，躺在地上那个拿走。我没有闹，这病躺那么多怎么办？
我们生人不要说我们逃命，我们在脸上就是等死了，我们就是等死了。我们妹妹这样累都要累死了，天天上班，1天休息都没有。
我今天已经上了1天的班，已经下班了，4点多钟下班，已经在那里崩溃了半天了，真的那种感染，这个电视那里报道的可怕多了，蛮多，他们医生出来的估计大概有10万人，我们今天那里10几个医生，一天都看了100多个。蛮多都已经不行了，没得位置住，然后家头这里闹说政府的不是说到你们那里治吗？但是政府让我们开始治，根本什么物资都没有，他们想办助燃都办不了，我觉得后续完全不行。我们在那里上1天班，整个人的心里都快崩溃了，都已经受不了了。他们在那求我们的时候，我们都一点办法都没得。就看到一个好生生的人，叫他慢慢的都不行，所以你们在屋里一定要做好防护，千万不要跟到说相信政府，我觉得全部都得要靠自己。See, I think we got one.
police video has been circulating online and gaining traction. In it, what appeared to be men dressed in police uniform on the street holding guns, then the sound of loud bands in the background. CGTN has not been able to verify the video that some online are claiming is evidence of police shooting at people in Hubei province.
Wrapping up a fact-finding mission probing the origins of COVID-19. Experts from the World Health Organization say they haven't been able to trace what happened in the early days of the outbreak.
Did we change dramatically the picture we had beforehand? I don't think so.
The WHO team arrived in Wuhan, China in mid-January. After spending 2 weeks in mandatory quarantine, they visited points of interest in what was once the epicenter of the pandemic. They conducted interviews in laboratories, hospitals, a seafood market, as well as Wuhan's Institute of Virology. The main hypothesis the team will now explore is coronavirus jumping to humans from an animal. However, the theory floated by former high-ranking US officials that COVID-19 originated in a lab in Wuhan has been dismissed.
We've gone as far as broad categories, most likely, less likely.
The findings suggest that the laboratory incident hypothesis is extremely unlikely.
The WHO's fact-finding mission has been plagued by controversy and comes over a year after COVID-19 started its rapid spread. Beijing has kept a tight hold on information on the possible causes of the pandemic. The WHO itself came under strong criticism for praising China's early response in containing the virus, which has now infected 105 million people around the world. It resulted in Donald Trump pulling out of the body and accusing its leadership of cozying up to China.
目前武汉发生的新型冠状病毒感染性的肺炎是一起突发的公共卫生事件。 新型冠状病毒的传染力不强，不排除有限人传人的可能，但持续人传人的风险较低。
Already, social media was reporting the disease with much more information than official sources.
Is it 天灾啊，还是人祸？北京也有，北京有。这个不光局限于武汉市，就是说，对，但它起源是在武汉市，华南海鲜市场。以前那个海鲜市场上卖什么的？什么生蚝啊、扇贝啊、鸡尾虾呀、花甲呀，什么鱼啊，这些乱七八糟的东西。
目前，日本、泰国、韩国已经向中方通报了新型冠状病毒感染确诊病例的情况。可以告诉你的是，目前武汉的地方政府已经采取了出境离汉人员管控措施。
He walks around the hospital grounds, but can't get into the isolation ward.
The building with infected patients is closed off. Ambulances are bringing in more cases.
Again, he pretends to have symptoms. He's asked to register.
你也烧吗？你烧几天？
早上刚开始的，37度4。
咳不咳嗽？
咳嗽。
需要没的？
还没有。
They're screening patients with basic questions.
你这口罩是 N95的吗？
我不知道，这是别人给我的。
哎，你这口罩是谁给你的？
家里人给我的，我也不知道这是。
那可以，你要戴。
Only 1 week earlier, the mysterious disease was named COVID-19.
有没有接触过那个发热咳嗽的病人？
接触过。
接触过就要写有。
啊。
接触过就要写有。
他没有确诊。
现在是目前的这个资料表示呢，它是肯定的有人传人，而一个在武汉是有这样的肯定的一些证据。
After the doctor's confirmation, the whole city becomes nervous. Everything. I feel that people were worry-free at first, as if nothing was happening. They are becoming nervous, fearful, and feeling powerless and lost.
On social media, there are suggestions that the number of cases are underreported.
我们就是什么呢？就是有些东西你那个源头还没查出来，你都也不能拿出去。
哦，那倒是。
你万一拿出去了，万一他的源头在这儿呢，把别人害死了。
证实了有医务人员的感染，有新型冠状病毒感染的一个病人，因为护理各方面，所以有14个这个医务人员的感染。
Now to growing concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S. A Washington State resident fell ill after returning from Wuhan, China, where the outbreak began.
它实际上这个通过野生动物这个传到人呢，这个是比较大的可能。
这玩意儿。有野猪肉吗？
野猪肉没有，
没有，市场里面。
市场这边没有。
Chen Wei pretends to be a restaurant owner seeking wild animals, which are considered a delicacy for a New Year's feast.
那野猪肉早就关门了，那不让开了，里面没看到那里面门面都关了，那就卖野味。
现在还有风声。
现在肺炎多厉害啊！人家还让。
野就有。
太厉害了。
而且这怕是。
现在吃就是吃啥？野鸡。它的野鸡啊，什么蛇啊，什么之类的。
它的源头是什么动物？现在基本上还不清楚。只是从各方面的流行病学的调查的话，它是来自一个野生动物。
By now, 15 provinces across China are affected. The World Health Organization cannot decide if the outbreak is an international public health emergency.
The views of the members of the committee, considering the information provided, was split.
I think there are many more infected patients in Wuhan than the number of confirmed cases. The official number is a fake number, far from the truth. The death of so many Wuhan residents infected with COVID-19, the hopelessness of suffering without medical help, all these never leave my mind.
While parts of the medical community are on the hunt for a vaccine against the coronavirus, others are on the hunt for its origin. While the first confirmed case was in China, the exact steps of the virus's early progression are still unknown. The current working theory is that the virus originated in Wuhan, but there's still more to learn. Sequencing the virus's genome is key for the ongoing medical forensic investigation, and scientists hope by pinpointing where the virus came from and how it jumped to humans, they'll be able to develop the tools to fight the future evolution of COVID-19.
Yes. Meanwhile, life in China, where COVID-19 was first detected, is mostly back to normal, with some health restrictions in place. But after strict lockdowns across the country, people here are once again able to go to concerts. New Zealand declared itself coronavirus-free on June 8th and has only seen a handful of cases since, even allowing travel and hosting large events again. At this time, there had been nearly 7.2 million cases worldwide. Europe's first taste of the pandemic came in February. Italy bore the brunt of COVID-19 then and was quickly forced into lockdowns. Deaths and cases piled up in hospitals in the northern part of the country, prompting border closures around the EU. On February 21st, there were only 78,205 cases around the world. Researchers believe the spark that first ignited the coronavirus pandemic took hold in China. Medical forensics is a big part of the equation now. Dozens of people connected to a wet market reported flu-like symptoms in the early part of last December. The leading theory is that a man originally contracted the virus from a bat. The W.H.O. is currently working to trace the virus's path to better understand how the pandemic could continue to spread.
Batman! Exclusive!
Chinese scientists linked to virus probe worked in Australia.
Inside the paper, headed Aussie links to Bat Lab Duo, was a double-page spread with pictures of the high-security Wuhan lab and the scientists who've been studying bat viruses there, similar to the one causing COVID-19.
Of course, when COVID-19 first broke out, it was believed that it originated from the Wuhan wet markets, but it's now been revealed, that it could have actually accidentally been released from the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
In the Sydney Morning Herald.
COVID-19 did not come from lab. The evidence is overwhelming that the virus that causes COVID-19 jumped from animals to humans, rather than escaping from a laboratory, virus experts say.
That must be investigated, and that is the possibility of an accident or leak from the Institute. It could have involved a virus that was improperly disposed of, says the Washington Post, or perhaps an infected lab worker who passed it on. Says this. To find out if there was a leak or laboratory accident at the Wuhan Institute of Virology or another lab, investigators would want to carefully examine research done there, including archived lab notes, records of experiments and data, intra-laboratory communications such as email, as well as bat samples, viral strains and all sequences from the Institute's collection to compare them with known genetic blueprints from the pandemic virus. This would require transparency and verification of data and sample provenance, but it has not been forthcoming.
It's a race against the clock as new mutations continue to evolve. Health officials blame high infection rates for the new strains. Each new infection opens the door to unknown variants, which threaten to undo the progress.
There is now a clear, real danger of mutations making the virus more transmissible, more lethal, and more resistant to existing vaccines. And we must act fast.
Understanding what's driving the virus's mutations, a crucial next step in our race against COVID-19.
It's the mutations that scientists say we need to keep an eye on.
Last week, EU authorities urged member states to do more on sequencing the genome of the novel coronavirus. The hope is that scientists can detect mutations earlier and keep track on how they spread. So far, major new variants have been identified in South Africa, the UK and in Brazil, all of them a cause for concern as they spread much faster. The reason is a mutation in the so-called spike protein that helps them attach more easily to human cells. The changes are not believed to cause a greater severity of illness, but the higher rate of transmission means more cases, putting even more pressure on healthcare systems. In many countries, there are already shortages of ventilators, intensive care units and staff. Plus, slowing down the spread of those new strains would require even more stringent lockdown measures. Initial studies have shown that BioNTech Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine is likely to be effective against the variant found in the UK. But scientists warn that may not be true for the strain found in Brazil. This subtype even seems to be spreading in Manaus, where 75% of the population had previous exposure to SARS-CoV-2. That could mean two things, scientists say: either that people remain vulnerable because their first infection was too long ago, or that the virus has mutated to such an extent that it's resistant to existing antibodies. Virologists are still conducting research into what that would mean for the efficacy of the vaccines. If it turns out that they do not provide protection against this new type of coronavirus, the vaccines would have to be updated. The good news is, as the BioNTech Pfizer vaccine and the one made by Moderna use synthetic messenger RNA or mRNA, they can both be quickly adapted. Scientists have suggested the changes could be made in as little as 6 weeks, but testing the new vaccine and authorizing it might take much longer.
In an interview with CNBC, the president of the EU showed support for a proposed investigation into the origin of the CCP virus. Ursula von der Leyen said on May 1st, "We've learned lessons this time," adding governments need to establish an early warning system with robust data. And to do that, they need transparency.
And the whole world has to contribute to that.
Some German, Swedish, and Australian parliamentarians are calling for an investigation into the origin of the CCP virus.
This is for all of us important. I mean, for the whole world it is important.
A research dossier by the Five Eyes intelligence agency, comprised of the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, states the Chinese regime intentionally hid or destroyed evidence of the virus outbreak, leading to tens of thousands of deaths around the world. The 15-page document obtained by Australian Daily Telegraph covers the Chinese regime's mistakes, including denial of human-to-human transmission, destroying virus lab samples, disinfecting the Huanan seafood market before investigations could occur, and refusing to provide samples to international scientists for vaccine development. The dossier also provides a timeline for China's response to the virus outbreak, including the silencing of whistleblower Dr. Li Wenliang. The regime also began censoring search term words that day, deleting terms like SARS variation, Wuhan seafood market, and Wuhan unknown pneumonia. The report goes on to state that in February, China pressured the US, Italy, India, Australia, and Southeast Asian neighbors not to protect themselves via travel restrictions. This despite China itself implementing severe travel restrictions. The Saturday Telegraph reported on Australia's involvement, highlighting two key figures at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, Dr. Shizhen Li and Zhou Peng, who worked in Australia for 5 years, focusing their research on uncurable bat